Hey guys, and welcome back to Dogforge. My name's Paul, and this is our Tasha's Cauldron of Everything series. Do you want more Tasha's and D&D content? Then hit that subscribe button and notification bell to get the latest on 5e. But now it's time to look enviously at your variant human fighter companion, because today, we're talking about feats. So, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything brings us 15 new feats. Not all of them may be applicable to your game, as with everything, everything is subject to the approval of the Dungeon Master, one of which particularly, as you will come to see. Now, first off, we get an Artificer Initiate feat, and this is in a similar vein to the Martial Adept and Magic Initiate feats. So, this does not have a prerequisite, and you're going to get the following benefits. You're going to get one cantrip of your choice from the Artificer spell list, and you learn one first level spell of your choice from that list. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these spells. That's pretty great because the Artificer spell list itself is pretty diverse as it straddles the spell lists of the classes that came before it. For example, it has a lot of great arcane options, particularly in the cantrip section, such as Firebolt for damage, but it also offers you things like Guidance and Mending. Next up, you can cast this feat's first level spell without a spell slot once per long rest. However, you can also cast it using a spell slot, something that was originally overlooked from the Magic Initiate feat. The Magic Initiate feat works slightly differently in that you can only cast that spell if you are of the class that you have taken the Magic Initiate feat in. With this, as long as you have spell slots, it doesn't matter what class you are, you can cast that spell. And the third and final point, you gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice, and you can use that type of tool as a spellcasting focus for any spell you cast that uses intelligence as its spellcasting ability. So it's opening up the tool-based focus from the Artificer, although this is primarily going to be more useful for things like wizards, arcane tricksters, and eldritch knights. Particularly, one thing that feels a little odd is that the native Artificer can use Thieves' Tools as a focus, but Thieves' Tools aren't actually an artisan tool, so you end up in a place where the Artificer can use Thieves' Tools as a focus, but the actual Arcane Trickster Rogue can't. A little odd, but still an interesting feat. Next up is primarily thematic gravy, with the Chef feat. So your time spent mastering the culinary arts has paid off, granting you the following benefits. Increase your constitution or wisdom score by 1, of course to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with cook utensils if you don't already have it. And then we get some rest-based benefits. So as part of a short rest, you can cook special food, provided you have ingredients and cook utensils. You can prepare enough of this food to feed creatures equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus. So we're talking minimum 6, maximum 10. And at the end of that short rest, any creature who eats the food and spends 1 or more hit die to regain hit points regains an extra 1d8 hit points. So now this is kind of similar to the Bard's Song of Rest ability, but it will also stack directly with that ability, as it will with the Genie Warlock's 10th level ability. So if you're playing a gritty realism game where you find yourself running out of hit dice frequently, this is a feat that could bring some real value. The final point, which is a little odd, I'm going to be honest, you can, at the end of a long rest, make a number of treats. Cookies, cupcakes, trail mix? Doesn't say, you choose. These special treats last for 8 hours after being made, and a creature can use a bonus action to eat one of those treats to gain temp HP. Unfortunately, that temp HP is only equal to your proficiency bonus, so this is very low level in its impact. It is 1 of 4 points, and it is a half feat, so it's better than nothing, I guess, but it's in this weird little gamist element of the feat. Moving on, however, and we get the first of 3 of our new weapon-based feats, Crusher. So now all of these feats are a half feat. In particular, Crusher allows you to bump your strength or con by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, note that this does not actually say that you need to use a weapon to do this. You can move it 5 feet to an occupied space, provided the target is no more than 1 size larger than you. One thing to note there is because it doesn't actually require you to use a weapon, monks can actually use this to bat around people even if they're not an open hand monk. This also does not give the target a saving throw. So if you're a medium creature, you can smack around everything from tiny to large without any repercussions and position them, say, in your druid's spike growth for some extra damage. Next, when you score a critical hit that deals bludgeoning damage to a creature, attack rolls against that creature are made with advantage until the start of your next turn. This is a pretty nice ability, and all of the melee, all of the fighting feats, that's a good way to classify these. They all have a critical condition, which means that these feats are going to be particularly appealing to a champion fighter. So next up we have Eldritch Adept, and our first of two pieces of art, as we have somebody stealing some warlock secrets. Now the Eldritch Adept is the second in our line of multi-classing light feats. So if you want to grab specific abilities or specific flavour within a certain limit, you can do that via feats without multi-classing from Tasha's onwards. Now this does have a prerequisite. You do need the spellcasting or pact magic feature, which means that if you just have, say, racial spells from being a tiefling, that's actually not enough to qualify for this feat, although a DM might adjudicate otherwise, and in my opinion would be reasonable to do so. So, studying occult lore, you have unlocked eldritch power within yourself. You learn one eldritch invocation of your choice from the warlock class. However, if the invocation has a prerequisite of any kind, you can only choose that invocation if you are a warlock who also meets that prerequisite. This means that you cannot pick up, say, Eldritch Blast from a feat, and then use this feat to pick up Agonizing Blast. Just because there's any prerequisite, which for Agonizing Blast is having Eldritch Blast, you need to be a warlock. What this does mean, though, is that if you are a warlock, you can get your invocations online a level earlier if you're a variant human or of custom lineage, and you can also expand the number of invocations that you have. And that's the theme with a lot of these diet multiclassing feats. They do help branch out into something else if you are another class, but if you are that class, in this case the warlock, it makes you an even better warlock than you were before. So bear that in mind as we go through the rest of them. Next up we have Fey Touched. So your exposure to the Feywild's magics has changed you, granting you the following benefits. Now this allows you to bump a mental stat, so int, wisdom or charisma, by 1. You get the Misty Step spell, and one first level spell of your choice from the Divination or Enchantment School. You can cast each of these spells once per day for free without burning a slot, and you can also cast them with any slots that you may have. Now this is a pretty interesting feat, and it's a marked bump up in power. So you get a second and first level spell, and Misty Step is a very useful spell. You can cast them for free, you can cast them with your slots, and it's a half feat. So there's the general sense of let's call it what it is. It's a bit of power creep. But it is certainly an interesting option, especially if you wanted to go for something like a Nightcrawler roguish kind of character. This will help you bamf along a little bit more than you would have been able to otherwise. Next up, Fighting Initiate. This is very simple. You just grab a fighting style. If you have a fighting style already, then you have to choose another one, and you need to have proficiency with a martial weapon. This can be from your class or your race, but you do need to have at least one martial weapon proficiency. Something that comes to mind with this would be a Bladesinger, for example. They get to choose one martial weapon as long as it's a one-handed weapon. So they could then choose this as a feat and pick up, say, dueling. Very good, and seeing as the fighter themselves has additional ASIs, this is also making them better fighters. Tasha's does include additional fighting styles, which we will be going over in our fighter video, so this does bring a lot of value. Next up is the subjective one. Gunner, this is specifically about using firearms, if you couldn't tell from the name already. So this is obviously going to be heavily dependent on the campaign and your DM in comparison with the other feats. Now this is a half feat, you get to bump your dex by 1. You gain proficiency with firearms, and it's specifically referencing the Dungeon Master's Guide, although using critical rolls, firearm rules from the Gunslinger class is also a pretty popular option. You ignore the loading property of firearms, meaning if that firearm only has a single shot, you can fire it more than once, similar to a crossbow. This tends to be less of an issue with firearms just because they often have multiple shots or full magazines. And finally, being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls. So this is basically Crossbow Expert gun version, although it's a little bit better in that this is actually a half feat. So you could take this hoping to get firearms, and still benefit quite a lot because you're still bumping your dex, and you're still invalidating the disadvantage on attack rolls. So that's pretty nice. Next up, we're dipping our toe in Sorcerer with the Metamagic Adept feat. This is basically going to allow you to grab 2 metamagic options, although again, just like with the Warlock version of this, you do need spellcasting or pact magic as a feature. You choose 2 metamagic options of your choice, and you can only use one of those options on a spell when you cast it, even if it says otherwise. Now this is one way that they're trying to emphasize that the Sorcerer is still better at metamagic, even though they're opening up the option of grabbing it from another source. As part of this feat, you're going to grab also 2 sorcery points to spend on metamagic. They specify that if you already have sorcery points, then they are added to the pool, although they make the, in my opinion, unnecessary distinction of saying that they have to be used on metamagic. The sorcery points you get from this pool come back on a long rest. Now this awkwardly splits your pool if you want to be a sorcerer that gets more out of their metamagic. You're going to have to track these points separately to the rest of your pool, and there's some implication here that you wouldn't be able to refill those 2 points by burning spell slots. There's no real mechanical reason for this that I can see. I mean, 2 spell points isn't going to push you over into the realm of ridiculousness. Having a larger maximum does allow you to potentially get access to higher level slots ahead of time, though that was always a possibility for the sorcerer, and it still doesn't give you higher level spells. So personally, if I were to take this feat, I would speak to my DM saying, hey, can we just ignore those restrictions and make it one big pool? But please bear in mind that when you take this in a game, what the actual role limitations are. Next up, and we have another, I think we coined them fighting feats. It's been so long ago. There's 15 of these things, guys. So, next up is Piercer, and as the name implies, it is specifying piercing damage. Now this is also a half feat, but this lets you bump strength or dex, which is appropriate because a lot of finesse or ranged weapons are piercing. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll that deals piercing damage, you can re-roll one of those attacks' damage dice, though you must use the new roll. That's a pretty nice average bump. It's not quite as interesting, in my opinion, as the others, but the critical hit allows you to deal an extra die of damage, which is also a nice bit of damage bump. So Piercer appears to be solely based around increasing the damage of piercing weapons, then imposing other interesting effects. And this could be because piercing weapons tend to be lower damage dice overall. Now, if you're looking at the great weapons, heavy weapons, the great axe and things like that, there's no D12 or 2d6 piercing weapon. Likewise, you're going to top out at 1d10 for piercing with a heavy crossbow. So this can help ramp up that damage a little bit. Next up, we have Poisoner, and I'm sure that there are some people that are going to be very happy to see this feat, as introducing some real poison usage support is very, very nice. So I would have rearranged these bullet points a little bit, but the first one is when you make a damage roll that deals poison damage, that ignores resistance. So that's great in making poison more applicable. If you are unaware, poison is one of the more commonly resisted damage types along with fire. However, remember this does not get you past immunity. And you can also apply poison to a weapon or piece of ammunition as a bonus action instead of an action. This makes it a little bit more friendly to use in combat, as poisons tend to dry out within a minute, which makes it kind of hard to prepare beforehand. This is great especially if you're a rogue, because you're typically going to be hanging back and only using your action to fire a single arrow anyway. Although there is an opportunity cost here in that if you're bonus action poisoning, then you're not bonus action hiding. But again, it's all about a balancing game. Now in addition, you gain proficiency with poisoning with the poisonous kit if you don't already have it. And with 1 hour of work using a poisonous kit and expending 50 gold worth of materials, you can create a number of doses of potent poison equal to your proficiency bonus. Once applied to a weapon or piece of ammunition, the poison retains its potency for 1 minute, like we were just talking about, or until you hit with the weapon or ammunition. When a creature takes damage from the coated weapon or ammunition, it takes a DC 14 Constitution saving throw, or takes 2d8 poison damage and becomes poisoned until the end of your next turn. This is a pretty fantastic bullet point in my opinion, because the actual PHP support for poison is, here's a basic poison. If you want to be about poison, hopefully your DM will introduce the more interesting ones from the DMG. This kind of gives the player more agency and allows them to say, look, here are some actual, rules that are player facing that allow me to create poisons, and it's actually worthwhile using. 2d8 poison damage that's overcoming resistance is nothing to sneeze at, and the poison condition, even though it's just for a turn, can be very influential in a combat. So overall, big fan of this feat. Next up we have Fey Touched cousin, Shadow Touched. So again, you're going to be able to bump your mental stats in Wizard Charisma by 1, and you're going to get another second and first level spell. However, this time you're going to grab Invisibility and 1 first level spell of your choice from Illusion or Necromancy. So False Life would fall into the Necromancy school if you're looking to bump up something like a squishy wizard. Something to think about. And again, you can cast each of these once a day for free, and you can cast them again using a spell slot of the appropriate level. And just as with Fey Touched, if I didn't mention this, the spellcasting ability for those spells is whatever you bump up with that feat. You'll typically be bumping whatever spellcasting modifier you're using anyway, so that's not really a problem. Next up, Prodigy's better cousin, Skill Expert. So, you increase 1 ability score of your choice to a maximum of 20, so this is a very flexible feat and who can take it and benefit from it. You gain proficiency in a skill of your choice, and then you can choose 1 skill in which you have proficiency. It does not have to be from this feat, it can be from your background, class or race as well. You gain expertise with that skill, which, if you weren't aware, doubles your proficiency bonus. And then just a disclaimer of the skill that you choose must not be already benefiting from something like expertise that does that. Pretty straightforward. But if you're looking to build that kind of skill monkey-ish character, or if you're going for something like a grappling build, this is a really great feat. The last of our fighting feats comes up with Slasher. Now again, this is going to be a half feat that allows you to bump your strength or dex, and then once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack that's slashing damage, you can reduce its speed by you can reduce the speed of your target, it's a long video guys, until the start of your next turn, as you're kind of slashing into the back of their heels. That's a really unpleasant mental image. And when you score a critical hit, because all of these feats have that critical condition, you grievously wound it, and the target has disadvantage on all of their attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Again, With all of these critical conditions, anything that expands your crit range is going to really benefit from that. Or, alternatively, if you're going crit fishing via advantage, so this would also be great on barbarians. Next up, and rounding us off, as we have this curious art of a childlike halfling inspiring somebody. We're dipping our toes into psionics. Now Tasha's has brought us psionics both in subclasses and also feats, and we're going to start off with Telekinetic. So you get to bump a mental stat of your choice by 1 again to a max of 20. You get the Mage Hand cantrip, which you cast without verbal or somatic components, and you can make it invisible because the Arcane Trickster can't have nice things. But if you already know it, then you increase its range by 30 feet. So if you are an Arcane Trickster, there is something to be had here, but you're still not getting as much out of this feat as other people. As a bonus action, you can try to telekinetically shove one creature you can see within 30 feet of you. When you do, the target must succeed a strength saving throw DC of 8 plus your proficiency, plus the ability boosted by this feat, or be moved 5 feet towards you or away from you, presumably in a straight line. Now the important thing here is that a creature can willingly fail this. Now what this basically means that if you have a party member that's in a really precarious position that they can't get out of, perhaps because of opportunity attacks, you can use your bonus action to just yank them out of there without provoking any opportunity attacks. And that's because opportunity attacks work on willing movement. So that's a nice little ribbon ability of this. I almost would have wanted the shove to be able to shove people prone, like the actual shove action. However, I can understand how shoving people prone as a bonus action at will would be a little bit much. Overall, nice feat. Nice little dip in your toes into psionics here. Finally, we're going to grab Telepathic. So again, one mental stat of your choice in Wiz or Charisma by 1. And that's the overriding thing here. You get a lot of useful feats in this book, but so many of them are half feats. And that's in stark comparison to the PHB. So you can speak telepathically to any creature you can see within 60 feet. However, this is only one-way telepathic communication. They cannot reply to you, and you must share a language. In addition to that little bit of telepathy, you're also going to get the Detect Thought spell, which again you cast with no spell slots or components because it's a psionic ability, and you can do this once per long rest. Now the spellcasting ability for that is whatever again you boost with this feat, and if you have slots 2nd or higher, then you can cast this again, specifying that you cannot get away with using a 1st level slot, even if you really wanted to. So, I'm really out of breath. That was 15 new feats, and I think, overall, there's a general direction north in terms of power creep, but there are some really interesting options there. So, what do you think about the new feats? Which is your favourite feat? Tell us in the comment section down below, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hey, whilst you're down there, hit that subscribe button and notification bell for more D&D and Tasha's content. My name's Paul, and I'll see you next time at the Forge.